A while back, I asked you if you prefer to live the soft life or go hard mode. The results are in, and I think realistically though, we probably want a mixture of both. And the trick to doing both is in what I call the 15% rule that I've been following for more than 4 years now, and you can have the enjoyment, the relaxation, but at the same time be able to do the hard thing, live at the edge of competence and improve over time. Let's first talk about the rule and then talk about the underlying principles that make it work. So the 15% rule is very simple. Out of all the actions I take, I want 15% to fail. If I don't hit this KPI, it means I'm playing too safe, I'm being too lazy, I'm staying in my zone of comfort, and there's room for improvement. And whether you want to adopt this rule or not depends on what you think about two concepts, flow and anti-fragility. On the surface, these look like two completely opposite ideas. Flow is about effortlessness and enjoyment when you match your skill with the challenge. You can grow your deep expertise over time by accumulating optimal experiences. And these experiences will get more complex as you become better and better at the skill. The idea is you don't want something too difficult too early. This way it discourages you, you don't want to do anymore. But also you don't want to be in the area where things are too easy. Then it gets really boring really quickly. So you want to be in the flow channel where your skill and the challenge matches up. You're lost in the moment, you can play, you feel the creativity for getting time. To optimize for this type of learning, you want an environment that's relatively predictable and controllable so that you can get into flow a lot easier. On the other hand, there's anti-fragility, which means you are getting stronger with stress. You don't want to be in flow, you want to be stressed. And there are 3 ways something reacts to stress. If you're fragile, like a wine glass, if I put a dumbbell, some weight on top of the glass, it will break. It's fragile. The second type is resilient. Let's say you get a bigger stainless pot. You put the weight on top, it's not going to crack, which is great, but it doesn't get stronger. What gets stronger with stress is anti-fragile. Something like our muscles, right? If we put some dumbbells on our shoulder, the more times we do this, the stronger our muscles are going to get. Not just be able to hold the weight, but actually be able to push it and increase the amount of weight it can carry over time. The real improvement comes from the third category, being anti-fragile, having a system where you're like a diamond. You used to be carbon, but underneath all that pressure, all that heat, you actually become stronger than your old carbon self. And you become more beautiful and clear in the process. Systems develop robust responses to stressors through exposure. So in this case, we want to be seeking out that stress, seeking out that volatility, that randomness in order to improve over time. Unlike flow, you're not looking to be in the moment enjoying everything. You want to be engaging with stress that is outside of flow. So it seems like these two concepts, flow and anti-fragility, don't quite mesh. But these two concepts are not mutually exclusive. They actually together help build two types of skills that will complement each other. Take flow. This is about the day-to-day expertise that we're building on. Say data science, right? The more you practice, you're in the flow state, the more you're going to increase your skills as well as increase the complexity of the challenge that you take on. So over time, you're going to get better at data science. But anti-fragility is about doing the unexpected. What happens when something unpredictable happens? How will you adapt? Right? Say AI all of a sudden can do 80% of data science jobs. What are you going to do then? That's what anti-fragility will be able to train us on. And we need both skills. And number 2 is, at the core, there are 2 fundamental principles that underpin these 2 seemingly different approaches. One is too much comfort and too much safety will inhibit development. And number 2 is long-term improvement comes from seeking out challenges and engaging with challenges. That's why we have the 15% rule. It's like how Google allots 1 day out of the work week for you to develop a new skill or work on a side project. Okay, technically that's called the 20% rule, but 15%, 20%, you get the idea. Is the difference is not in the percentage, but in this idea of carving out some time dedicated to taking on new challenges, learning new things, and allowing yourself the possibility of failing. This in itself is an application of 80-20, the Pareto principle. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can check it out in this video here. Since implementing this 15% rule for 4+ years now, I realized it made me react differently to people around me. And it made me not just better at gaining skills and being able to translate those things into results, but actually it makes me mentally stronger. There are 3 reframes that's really helpful for me, and it might help you as well if you don't feel really comfortable with the idea of failing. The first one is, a mistake is not a bug, it's a feature. I am building into my system space to make mistakes, and we all intellectually completely understand, okay, we should make mistakes. Failure is the mother of success, but not so many of us actually embrace it. And so by giving myself 15%, I'm giving myself the permission to live on the edge of my competence and not feel like, oh, I should stay in the safe zone because I'm used to it from traditional schooling system, from big corporations that train you, hey, you shouldn't make any mistakes. Which also leads me to the second reframe I had, which is to expect negative feedback from people. Feedback, opinion, constructive, not constructive. I always tell myself, especially now that I'm doing things on YouTube, that if I don't get some sort of haters, if I don't get some sort of negative feedback, it just means I haven't reached enough people with my work. So I take that, the lack of negative feedback, just as a sign of I'm not trying enough. I'm being too safe. I am only preaching to the people who like what I'm saying. The reframe the 15% rule gave me was, even if I'm doing a fantastic job, I should expect negative feedback and negative opinions. Because Uber and Airbnb, when they first came out, the investors thought they were crazy. Who's going to get into a stranger's car? Who's going to stay at a stranger's home? But they didn't realize the fundamental principle of if it's a willing transaction, there is at a price where people would do that. And there's lots of things that you can put into place so that it's safe. Or Walt Disney, he was told he had no good ideas when he was working at the newspapers. Turns out he's got plenty of good ideas. He just needed that creative freedom to tell the stories that he wanted to do. So there's a plenty of well-intended negative feedback that people don't want you to waste your time, waste your resources on something that they think won't work, but they haven't seen necessarily the underlying principles. So for me, this 15% buffer just gives me some space to actually look at, well, what is happening? What are the things that are not working? What are the things that are working? If the feedback resonates, I will change. If the feedback doesn't resonate, well, I've got a little bit of buffer to just move on and figure it out for myself. And the third thing is, sometimes even if everything goes wrong, I'm just unlucky because of the timing, because of a series of unfortunate events, whatever it might be. Even if I've done everything right, things could not work out. Things are outside of my control, and that's okay. I've got 15% buffer. I have budgeted for those moments. Just having 15% of mental space in my head gives me so much more freedom and resilience and strength to be able to take on things that may or may not work. And because it's 15%, there's also plenty of space where I can do things that get me into the flow, that get me working on the predictable expertise that I want to spend time building. So I think we can have the best of two worlds. And another example is this video where I read hard books with ChatGPT. Let me know what you think about antifragility and flow and the 15% rule, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!